which means that it's going to be 10 seconds from now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. All right, so it is Canelo versus Crawford fight, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff unrelated to the fight, also related to the fight as it goes with his tradition of Las Vegas super fights that have gone on for years. Obviously, there was Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather, which was held in the MGM Grand Arena. Also, how about Joe Calzaghe taking on Bernard Hopkins back in 2008? By the way, at the old Thomas Mack Center. So we're talking about places that are rarely used nowadays, right? MGM, Thomas Mack. But this weekend, or next weekend rather, the fight is taking place in Raiders Stadium. Now, how amazing is that, right? How amazing is that? Raiders Stadium. I don't think there has been a real big fight in Raiders Stadium yet, at least not to this magnitude. Okay, now, obviously, the other big fights that we can talk about in the Las Vegas super fight sphere of things is, well, how about Khabib versus McGregor back in 2018? Okay, now that fight right there was absolutely insane. Okay, now obviously this is more geared towards boxing. This is an MMA event that we're talking about that happened in 2018, but the theme of Las Vegas is sort of right in there. Let me read some of the newer comments right here. So, Boars MMA says, hello. Paris was a fantastic card. Indeed, it was. It was very much underrated. BSD submission looked like Khabib versus Conor. Yes. Yes, that is a very good point. And it's a great way that we're segueing this into that because obviously we're talking about that fight that happened in 2018. And yesterday, BSD sort of did a choke that was very similar to that. Okay, now the choke is not so much right underneath the neck. Okay, the choke is more of in the chin. So instead of a neck choke, it was more of a crank, but it worked nonetheless. So, yeah, great segue into that, right? Also, the other Las Vegas fights that have happened all throughout the years as we are preparing for Canelo versus Crawford, okay, is how about this? Speaking of McGregor, how about Mayweather versus McGregor that happened in 2017? Now, I got to tell you, leading up to that fight, man, I thought I knew or understood boxing up until that fight. Let me tell you why. Because I thought that going into that fight, if you have a shred of athleticism, a shred of speed, or even just a decent amount of punching power, you can go into the world of professional boxing and go very far. Now, that could be true for someone like McGregor. Okay, that could be absolutely true for McGregor if he was to, let's say, fight anybody else that was not Floyd Mayweather. Okay, like for example, what if he was to fight James DeGale? By the way, strangely enough, James DeGale is one of his fighters now who's now fighting under the BKFC banner. And it's crazy how a lot of things have changed since then, obviously, right? From 2017, could you even imagine that James DeGale is going to fight at BKFC? Or did we even know what BKFC was back in the days, right? Now, obviously, when it comes to boxing, the roots of boxing come from the bare knuckle boxing days, right? In which they just decided to implement gloves one day. And then as history has shown, all of a sudden they decided, you know what, we're going to make this into two different sports. Face crank. Yes, that's right. Big Boars. That is a face crank. Conor going to boxing ended up being his downfall. That is absolutely true. You know what? I'm going to mark that comment right there. Okay. Because I've said this over and over again, and I think a lot of people sort of agree with that notion. Now, going into that fight, uh, yeah, what was I saying? Sorry, hold on a second. Got a little distracted there. Let me see what I said prior to that. Let me rewind back what I just said so that I can catch my thoughts here for a second. Let's see here. Yeah, before before I used to be one of those people that would get really upset when an ad came on until it's my video that's on it. But hold on, let me see here what I had said here. Oh, okay. Connor ended up as a downfall in boxing. So yeah, okay. So yes, it's a downfall for him, right? Because look, here's the thing. I know a lot of people are saying that you know what, it's the fight that brought him the bag. That's true, but then if you think about it, how much more bags would he have obtained all throughout his career if, let's say, he had fought MMA and then a legendary career that would have followed after that, right? So that's sort of the debate with Conor McGregor, right? If he didn't go into boxing with Floyd Mayweather, which, by the way, I argue that he was badly damaged in that fight. And a lot of people don't really think that because they think of Floyd as somebody who has pillow hands or somebody that doesn't really hit hard. But guys, I got to tell you, getting punched by a professional boxer is getting punched by a professional boxer by the end of the day, and it still hurts. Whether it's Francis Ngannou or whether it's Paulie Malignaggi, who, by the way, out of all the world champions that I've seen, has like the lowest rate of knockout ratios. Right? I'll always go into the cards and whatnot. MMA says that's true. It did help him get more fame. Yes, it did. But with that fame, it caused karma like the injuries he ended up having when going to MMA again. Okay, so that's very true right now. This is why I say that the Khabib fight honestly helped him or at least debilitated him into having a weaker chin. If you remember in that fight, the second round, okay, Khabib hit an overhand right over him, right? And by the way, at that point, no one has ever knocked down Conor McGregor, not even Nate Diaz, I don't think. I think Nate Diaz rocked him. He did fall. Okay, that was not based on a takedown. So, okay, yeah, Nate Diaz was the first guy to knock Conor McGregor down. But out of all the people in the world of MMA, you would not have imagined that it would be Conor McGregor that would take him, that would knock him down, that it would be Khabib to knock him down. Because obviously, Nate has the boxing. He's trained with Andre Ward over the years, and shout out to Andre Ward, all related to this. He's also going to be one of the hosts or play as desk analyst for this fight coming up Saturday. So a lot of people are sort of complaining about that because they look at they look at him as sort of a biased force, right, towards Terrence Crawford. Now, obviously, Andre Ward has close ties with Andre Ward. Andre Ward has close ties with Crawford. He's got close ties with Shakur Stevenson. So he's part of that clique, right? So, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of some biasness in there. But then again, you look at DC, it's not like Daniel Cormier doesn't have like people that fight in the same cards that he commentates in. And, that's just the name of the game. But yeah, that fight absolutely hurt him in the long run because what I was saying was that, okay, he had $100 million for that fight, right? Suppose he fought in the UFC. What if he stayed and decided he was going to fight Tony Ferguson? Well, how would that have worked out, right? Well, I think that would have been big money. Obviously, Tony Ferguson at the time was in his prime. That was one of the people they were talking about fighting Conor McGregor. And also, Tony Ferguson was in that same card at UFC 229, if you look right here, against Anthony Pettis. So he obviously was able to finish Anthony Pettis, I believe, in the second round, or I believe he was not able to answer the bell, which is what had caused the stoppage, right? So, yeah, Ovince St. Preux was also in that card. How about that against Dominic Reyes when Dominic Reyes was on the rise? Derek Lewis was in that card. If you remember, that's where the infamous line that he says, and I'm not going to repeat it, but you guys know what it is. Okay, right after he had taken off his fight shorts and I believe threw it to the crowd, or had gestured that famous phrase that he always says. But man, Volkov was winning that fight until, of course, he wasn't and got knocked out. And ever since that fight, I think Derek Lewis was awarded a title shot. So yeah, that's that. And then the main card fight from that was yeah, Derek Lewis, Alexander Volkov, Open St. Preux, and Dominic Reyes, and then Tony Ferguson and Anthony Pettis. So that was basically the main card of that fight, and that was when the UFC had its Fox deal. So yeah, that's one of the biggest Vegas fights that have happened. But obviously, this is geared more towards boxing. So let's take a look at some past fights aside from Conor McGregor and Mayweather. Also, we're going to look at Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather in 2015 as a big Vegas fight as well. But among the other big fights prior to all that, how about this, right? Check out this magazine that I found, this magazine article that I found from back in 2007, right? If you remember, man, back in the days, people read magazines, people read newspapers. You guys know the video game Saints Row, right? Obviously, the video game Saints Row took place probably around, like, I believe 2011 or 2010, 2012-ish. Okay, so I look at the NPCs in that video game, right? The the non main characters, the NPCs, the ones, the random civilians that you see in the streets. I noticed something, and remember, this game takes place in 2011. People back then were reading newspapers in the streets. Do you remember that? Nowadays, who do you see does that, right? How many people do you know have magazines in their bathroom, right? Who needs them nowadays, right? Because if you're going to be in in the comfort room for a certain amount of time, you have your phone with you to read whatever, right? But back in the days, it was magazines, right? If you remember, even in the hip hop genre, right? What was that? Word Up magazine. Even Biggie referenced that, right? I used to read Word Up magazine, salt and pepper up in the limousine, all of that, right? So that was those were the times where people were reading magazines. How about some MMA magazines that I remember back in the days? Fighters Only, I remember that was a magazine. Black Belt magazine, something way before MMA, right? This was when I really first started learning about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the 90s, was in a Black Belt magazine where they featured all these guys that are like, oh, who are these guys? They're wearing a gi just like the Taekwondo and karate people, but they're fighting on the ground. So there's a little bit of some, different styles here. And then that's where I kind of realized, okay, this is very similar to wrestling and this, that, and the other. But yeah, speaking of magazines and newspapers back in the day, this was KO fight posters from back in the days, right? Look at right here. You see right here, UK businessman. It looks like there's some commercials going on here. And then right here, look at the old Manchester City symbol right there with the eagle, right? He says, good luck, Ricky, from all of us at Manchester City, which, by the way, leads us to the fight between Mayweather versus Ricky Hatton, which took place in December 8th, 2007 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. What's significant about that fight, they were both undefeated. Okay, very similar to, Fresh, this is not a replay. This is actually me on here right now. So just letting you know, yeah, this is not one of those replays. This is me live and in person right now as I am speaking to you. But yeah, so if you could remember back in the days, Ricky Hatton was undefeated, right? So was Floyd Mayweather. So it was great because let's just be honest about this, right? You got a white English guy, undefeated, black American, undefeated. Guess what you're going to get? You're going to get the dum-dums of the world tapping into that fight. And I'm not talking about the people that know or understand the sport for what it is, because that's not who I'm talking about. The dum-dums out there who don't know the sport, who don't understand that there are different groups of people that train with each other in multiple gyms around the world, and that there are people in, let's say, Floyd Mayweather's staff, for example, right? There's this overall narrative where they used to say that Floyd hates Mexicans or this, that, and the other, but he had a Mexican assistant trainer. He had Mexican training partners. He had Mexican fighters under his promotion or under his management that he went and helped out, right? Helped out with their careers, right? And then also this other narrative, right, of when he fought Manny Pacquiao, one of Floyd Mayweather's cameramen, the guy that follows him around, basically his social media manager, was a Filipino guy, right? And a lot of people don't know that. So they try to, create this divide or this, that, and the other. And well, the reason for that is because there's not really a lot of smart or intelligent people out there. They just don't understand the sport of boxing, let alone mixed martial arts or combat sports, period. They just know and understand that, hey, you know what? This is our guy. We're going to root for him. He comes from the same place as me. He comes from this, that, and the other. So we're going to root for him just based on that alone, right? That's the mentality of most people. And here's the thing. Floyd absolutely understands that. He absolutely understands the implications of that and how people are when it comes to all of this, racist stuff, right? So they play into it, and that's why it was a big fight, right? So it was two undefeated guys from two different parts of the world. And if you remember, let's take a look at some world tours that Ricky Hatton and Mayweather had going on, right? I believe Mayweather was wearing a Manchester United jersey at this time, right? And obviously, Floyd Mayweather doesn't understand football or soccer from a can of paint, but he wore it anyway to basically agitate the fans of Ricky Hatton, who are majority of them Manchester City supporters, if not just, the fact that they would support an English guy anyway. But let's take a look at some footage on that back in the day. Mayweather versus Hatton. Right here. So let's go right here.
For your words, create your brand.
Adam, if I can just interrupt for 1 second. There is somebody missing from the stage, and we think he is ready. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome on stage from Michigan, pretty boy, Floyd Mayweather.
Pretty boy Floyd Mayweather. Can you imagine if he called himself that today, right? Obviously, this is a different time frame, different era. Floyd was a completely different individual back then. And man, look at the grainy quality of the pictures right there. It kind of gives you that 2007 vibe. But anyways. All right, and here he goes right here. He's going to put on the Manchester City. I'm sorry, Manchester United, not Manchester City.
Sorry.
All right, so there you go. Yeah, that was Floyd back in the days. And Ricky Hatton, good times, good times. Obviously, that is what this live stream is about, is going back to the nostalgia of all these past fights. Now, obviously, yeah. So we were talking about Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, if you remember, right? Obviously, that fight right there took a very long time to get done, right? And for multitudes of reasons, right? And looking back at it in hindsight, I'm going to be honest with you, right? I think Floyd had every right to be suspicious of Manny Pacquiao because, look, man, uh, he started out at 108 pounds. Okay, 108 pounds. All of a sudden, he moves up to 115. Then after that, he moves up to 120. Then after 120, he moves up to 130, then 135, then 140, then up to 147, where he never really went higher than that. But in between that, he was getting knockouts left and right and this and that. And look, here's the thing. He's never failed a drug test, right? But it doesn't mean that he hasn't done it. Look, at a certain level, and at a certain pay grade that you have in boxing, you can absolutely get away with a lot of things. Okay, you can get away with drug tests because here's the thing, right? The only people that drug test you in boxing are the athletic commissions, and it's not really that elaborative. Okay, uh, you go to a doctor's clinic or a place where they draw blood. They check your blood just to make sure you don't have any type of diseases that would somehow affect the fighter in a negative way or affect your opponent in a negative way. And then that's about it, right? And if they find any traces of drugs on you or anything like that, then they can flag you for whatever reason. But what is very elaborative is, let's say, when you have USADA under you, which is what the UFC had. And by the way, that's a little bit different because in the UFC, you are, well, people say that you're an independent contractor, but in reality, you're an employee because I don't know what employer out there can literally send somebody to your house to do a drug test, right? In fact, that's just basically impeding your own personal rights and privacy to a certain extent, right? No job in the world will really do that unless it's a government job. And even then, that's done at a facility where you are working at rather than, just being asked to take your piss at a random place, right? So, all right. The thing is that I think Floyd had, some rightful suspicions, about Manny. I mean, look, it's very unusual, right? 108 all the way to 147, and you're knocking out people in between that. Like, have you guys ever seen a fighter that is 108 pounds, right? You guys have seen fighters in the UFC at 120 pounds. And guess what I've noticed, with that? What I've noticed with that is, well, you know what, man, there's, how do I say this, man? Oh, there's not a lot of knockouts in these fights. And with good reason. Look, they're smaller men, right? Fighting against other smaller men who are fast, who have a lot of durability on top of the fact that they have a lot of stamina. So it's very hard to get a finish. And then here's Manny Pacquiao just finishing people left and right. So it is no wonder why Floyd decided to wait a little bit longer until he would fight Manny Pacquiao. In fact, he waited until Manny Pacquiao got knocked out by Manuel Marquez. And then after he got knocked out by Manuel Marquez, Manny Pacquiao took a year off under the advice of Freddie Roach. And then when he took that year off, he came back, got a couple of wins, and Floyd was like, hey, you know what? Let's do it. I see vulnerability in you, so I'm going to take that opportunity. And this is the reason why Floyd retired undefeated, because he had, a very methodical way of planning his fights. But on any regard, it's kind of indicative of what I heard Manny Pacquiao say in the Netflix documentary with Canelo and Crawford, right? That one panel where they had all the different boxers. They had Roy Jones, they had Mike Tyson, they had Manny Pacquiao go talk in there. And I noticed there's no Floyd in there, right? And I started to notice a very subliminal language going into that, right? And the subliminal language goes as something as follows, right? He says something to the effect of, you know what, man, this is Manny saying this. You know what? You cannot avoid people because it will sustain your legacy. That's what he said, right? And I almost feel like that's a shot at Floyd Mayweather. In particular, you could kind of take that as a shot against, against John Jones as well, right? So, but I look at it like, all right, you know what? Is that the right thing to do in your career? I don't know, but by the end of the day, you have to do what you think is right for you and not what the fans think. And I think ultimately that's what Floyd Mayweather did for himself, as opposed to Manny Pacquiao, who went in there and did it all for the fans, right? So he does it all for the fans. What does he do? Goes in there for the fourth time against Manuel Marquez. By the way, a fight that he never really needed to do in the first place, and then gets knocked out like this, like what you see in the picture right now, face down, right? He walks in on it, right? Like literally walks in on that right hand that Manuel Marquez hit him with, and then goes face down, and and then that was that. So then after that, obviously, Floyd started seeing the vulnerabilities. But the Manuel Marquez Manny Pacquiao fight, that was one of those fights that was part of this Las Vegas super fight theme that I'm sort of going at right now. So the other fight that went on in Las Vegas that was big time fight, big time drama show, as Triple G would say, was Bernard Hopkins taking on Joe Calzaghe. Speaking of guys that retired undefeated, here's Joe Calzaghe retiring at 46-0. Right. And what's crazy is that it kind of reminds me a lot about Khabib and the way that he went about his career. Right. Going into this fight with Bernard Hopkins, it was his 44th fight, which means that he had 44 wins going into that fight. So this was his 45th fight. And then the last fight was against Roy Jones Jr. Okay. And then that was his final fight. Very similar to Khabib. He fights Conor. Then afterwards, he fights Dustin. And then in his last fight, he fights Justin Gaethje. And then that was it, right? Very big names of that particular division, just like Joe Calzaghe fought the big names of his time, which was Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins, and then among other names as well. But the top two Americans that he had fought is obviously, the two biggest stars of that time. So, yeah, man, that was another interesting event, because this took place at the Thomas Mack Center. Right now, where is the Thomas Mack Center now? Obviously, there's new facilities that we are seeing right now in professional boxing. Right, when it comes to Wembley, started out by Carl Froch, followed up by Anthony Joshua. Now we got the Allegiant Stadium, which is the Raiders Stadium. Where is Thomas Mack Center at? Let's take a look at where this place is at right now. So is it still around? I believe it is still around. Wow. Okay. So Thomas Mack Center is still around. Looks like, what do they have going on here? Bull riding shows of some sort. Okay. So this is the planning, the seat planning right here. So, okay. So you would see that they would have a ring right there. These are the seats. These are the insides. Okay, so Thomas Mack Center is still around, and obviously it is a place used by the UNLV, the University of Las Vegas Rebels basketball team. So there it is right there. There it is, the Thomas Mack Center, right? I thought this place was long gone, but obviously they still use it. Okay, the NBA Summer League was played there 6 months ago. Maybe still do. 6 years ago, maybe they still do. So, okay, so this is the Thomas Mack Center right here. Let's see the video of this. Okay. Okay, so going through Google Earth right here, and that is the Thomas Mack Center. Okay, so just a little bit outside of the Las Vegas Strip, from what I understand. But I tell you what, this fight right here, it's not going to be in the Thomas Mack Center for as big as the fights that they've had over there. It's not going to be at the MGM Center, which, by the way, was the place of Floyd, Money Mayweather, and Manny Pacquiao. Not even Conor McGregor and Floyd fought out there. They fought at the T-Mobile Arena. Well, now they got another arena, or another stadium, which is the Raiders Stadium, right? So That's big in and of itself. So, okay, going back to this fight, what was significant about this fight with Joe Calzaghe? Obviously, Joe Calzaghe at the time had fought only people in the UK, right? Now, this is the biggest thing that a lot of people ask about UK hype trains that are coming to America in the world of boxing, right? Can they take on the top American stars that they have in each generation? That is always the question that they have, right? When it was Lennox Lewis, they asked, well, can he take on the likes of Holyfield and Mike Tyson? Well, he proved that he can. When it was Tyson Fury, they asked, well, can you go in here and take on the likes of Deontay Wilder? And lo and behold, he did. After that win, all of a sudden, everybody started jumping on Tyson Fury. And here's the thing that I really want to emphasize on that with the Tyson Fury fight, right? I'm going to be honest with you. In the UK, the Fury family sort of see themselves as something different from the average white Englishman, right? In fact, they sort of classify themselves as a race of their own, right? They sort of classify themselves as gypsies. So even though they have some sort of white European descent, in reality, they don't claim that whatsoever. What they claim is just being a gypsy. But in the United States, they see Tyson Fury as the great white hope, because I'll tell you this from what I've read in the comment section of that fight during that time. By the way, there's another big Vegas fight right there, was the Deontay Wilder and I think that was that took place in LA first, and then they went to Vegas. And yeah, so the comments were, oh, I can't, I'm so happy that Tyson Fury beat the living heck out of this, and then you insert racial connotations underneath that. I seen all of that. They saw Tyson Fury as a great white hope as a result of that fight. And again, it kind of shows you that, hey, sometimes, it is the UK guys that win in these exchanges. Just like if Tom Aspinall was going to fight John Jones, many people are picking Tom Aspinall to win that. But speaking of racial implications, I mean, look at the racial tirade that Bernard Hopkins had said during that fight. I'm going to play you a clip. And for those of you old school guys that have been following boxing for a long time, you're going to understand this, right? So let me pull out this. This little sound bite that he had. Right here.
I would never let a white boy beat me. I would never let a white boy beat me. I'll never let a white boy beat me. You call it any statement you want. Anybody can break down. I would never lose to a white person. I would never let a white boy beat me.
Okay, so I know what you're thinking, right? Probably ignorant on the part of Bernard Hopkins to say something like that. But here's the thing. This is what goes back to the comments that I had said earlier about the dum-dums that they are trying to attract into the sport. Because the reality is that, yes, real hardcore boxing fans and real hardcore MMA fans have good knowledge of the sport. They have a great understanding of the sport, and that I understand. But the reality of it is this. The reality of it is that you need the dum-dums in order to attract, what do you call it? A higher sample pool size of an audience. Okay, they're going to eat all that up. Oh, I can't believe Bernard said that. He said that about Joe Calzaghe. Oh, now I want to see it. And then, of course, on the other side of things, you look at the white English guys that are looking at this. They're like, oh, my God, I can't believe that racist wanker said that. I can't freaking believe that. I hope Joe Calzaghe puts it on him. you know, and then next thing you know, now they want to go tune in that pay-per-view. Maybe they even want to go fly to Las Vegas and go see that fight, book a hotel, make a whole event out of it, sing soccer chant songs like "You's a wanker, you's a wanker," all of that, right? That's what they do. That's what all of this is literally about. So I tell you what else? It was some of the big fights that we talked about Manuel Marquez. We talked about Pacquiao, number 4. That was a very big one because it was a fight that Manny Pacquiao didn't need to take. But guess what? Because of that loss, it was the fight that Floyd was like, I see vulnerabilities in his game, and I think that we can step in here now and do it after 10 years later or something like that, or maybe 5 years later when they first wanted to do it in when they wanted to do it in, like, I think 2010 was probably the prime time of them being able to, you know, really fight. But Floyd waited 5 years later. So we talked about Bernard Hopkins and Joe Calzaghe, the whole thing about, you know, race, nationalism, all of that being displayed in this fight. Just like Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather too, obviously, that had a lot of the same elements to it. De La Hoya, I almost forgot to mention this. How about De La Hoya and Mayweather? Now, the lead up to that was absolutely amazing, which, by the way, sort of relates to this particular subject matter at hand that we are talking about, which is the previews, right? The evolution of promoting the fight game. Okay, so you look at Netflix now, right? You've seen how they presented Canelo's life. You've seen how they presented the life of Terrence Crawford. How about when they had the 24/7 thing going on with De La Hoya and Mayweather? And how about this? During that time, Diego Sanchez, okay, to add more legendary status to his name, you know, if it hasn't already, he goes in there, okay, and trains with De La Hoya. And De La Hoya was sort of supported by the UFC, which was crazy to think about, right? He had a huge support from the UFC. They allowed him to train at the gym, just like Ricky Hatton, right? Before they had a PI center, they allowed Ricky Hatton to train at what do you call it? At the at a UFC gym. It was not the PI center yet. It was sort of like the UFC gym. So yeah, that's kind of what they had going on at the time, was a relationship with anybody who was going to fight Floyd Mayweather. But this fight right here, I tell you what, I feel like the UFC is against Canelo Alvarez. I think that they are siding with Terrence Crawford on this one. And you look at what Turkey El-Sheikh said. It's crazy that, well, actually, you know what? It's not crazy. Come to think about it, right? But I'm sure in the minds of other people, it's crazy how he literally picks Terrence Crawford as his favorite. And people are saying, well, is he allowed to do that? The answer is yes, because he's not a promoter. He's not Eddie Hearn. In fact, he hired a promoter for this one, and that's going to be Dana White, who's going to be impartial about all this. But the reality of it is that Turkey El-Sheikh is close with the UFC, and as he's close with the UFC, he is going to have the UFC side with who he wants to side with, even if they're not really speaking out loud about it. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be a screw job going on with this or this, that, and the other, but I don't know, man. I don't believe that there's such things as screw jobs in boxing, because let's face it, Bivol had beaten Canelo as well, but then again, he did beat him soundly to the point where, you know what, you can't really deny him of any of it. But I tell you what, it's sort of like this, right? Canelo says that Terrence Crawford is not at this level because he hasn't beaten anybody. But here's the thing. Here's what they mentioned at the preview for at Netflix, right? Terrence Crawford said, I took the long, hard road. I didn't have the names or the big stages that Canelo had, but now I have that opportunity to do so. Okay. And, well, I tell you what, a lot of people are really underestimating Terrence Crawford in this one, but then there's also a lot of people that are wishful thinkers for Terrence Crawford to win this, including myself. But I tell you what, just like what Boxing Habit said, right? As I'm crediting this meme right here, he says, if you're picking Crawford to defeat Canelo and Canelo wins, give Canelo his credit. Okay? Understand that. Give Canelo his credit. And yeah, that is all that we really have for this one right here. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
MMA needs if you want to find predictions, news, and everything that deals with MMA. Shout outs to Kyrie Abu El-Kheer MMA, Sacramento, California represent.
That's right, Kyrie. I appreciate you, my nigga. You came in here, you was talking that shit. That's right, bro. Much love, Flo. I appreciate you for always stepping in, bro. Be safe out there. Man, my nigga Kyrie, my man Kyrie came through. He started talking that shit. Hey, here's the thing. Here's the thing. That nigga will whoop your fucking ass. You will think that nigga's all squared up and all that type of shit. Nigga come through and beat your fucking ass. Like, man, fuck you up. You will never see it coming. So for those of y'all